Some 19 years ago, the Singhi family welcomed a stranger into the house. Someone whose name we didn't know how to pronounce and didn't even know where it was from. Well, most of us anyways. And like us, 13 lakh other Indian families spent time and got to know Hyundai Santro really well. Its tall boy design made it very spacious, its modern day technology made it very frugal and reliable, which made it a great partner as the first family car. And now, in 2018, as you all know, there is an all-new Hyundai Santro, and a lot has changed for us, and so have our expectations. Can the new Santro wow us this time around? I know a lot of you are going to look at this and say, surely the Santro hasn't stepped up on the design quotient, right? But I'm going to tell you, first and foremost, don't judge it on your screen. Look at it in the flesh and you'll realize that the design works. And I'll start with the face. It's got a lot of aggression here. Yes, it has a lot of similarity to the i10 and the Grand i10, but it kind of wears out as you spend time with it. And that grille really makes it a very dominating face. When it's coming up in the rear view mirror, you can make out what it is. And the Hyundai logo sitting up top here gives it that added dash of premiumness, doesn't it?
There is a strong connection between the Santro and the Grand i10 under the skin, their platform. So we will end up comparing them a bit. But Hyundai has taken pains to give the Santro its own identity.
As we move around to the side, you'll find that there are some interesting elements there that give it character as well. For instance, those boomerang lines over the front wheel arch and the rear wheel arch. But the line that I like the most is the window line. The way it dips down as it comes to the rear window is particularly nice. But why have they done that? We'll get to that later. And at this angle, I'm also going to tell you a little bit more about the Santro, and that's it doesn't feel as much of a tall boy this time around. And that's because it is about 30 millimeters lower than the old Santro, but it is still higher than the Grand i10.
And since it is wider than before, it looks more proportionate and hence less tall. So this is a bigger, different Santro, but it has a hint of the past.
If you're looking out for Santro-like design cues, here are a couple. The door handles, inspired from the original Santro, and so is the C-pillar. It has that upright line at the back with a little bit of a kink. And if you look at the rear, well, it isn't aggressive like the front. You do have the dual tone bumper, which gives it a bit of sportiness, but overall this just looks neat. Before we go any further, something I'd like to point out, which I'm sure a lot of you have spotted. The Santro's missing a bit of features, right? Yeah, those are 14-inch steel wheels. No alloys offered even on this top-end Asta variant. And if you look at the headlamps, all halogens, no LEDs there.
So there are some cutbacks on this budget car. But what about the inside?
Well, if this is going to be your family car, one thing is for sure. The family is going to feel pretty rich. Because just look at the quality of the interiors that Hyundai is offering on this Santro. It feels like it's from a car that's so much more expensive. Everything from the textures for the plastic, the feel of the plastics that's used here on the dashboard, nice satin finish here, buttons, everything just has such a nice click to it. Everything just feels so well engineered. This just ends up feeling like a more premium car. This car that we're in has the special Diana green color, which means it also gets special bits like this. The green inlays here surround for the aircon vents, even on the edges, and of course even the trim for the controls infotainment system. If you look down here, even the gear lever gets that surround. But that's not all, because you also get this. And oh my, I just want this car because of this seat belt, and I'm sure a lot of younger people out there will want this just for this funkiness on the inside. And if you're talking about funky, do take a closer look at the aircon vents, which get that propeller-like design, which makes it look really cool. But the downside is that those vents can't be shut off. Yeah, let's talk about the practical stuff too. For instance, these seats, superbly bolstered, and this mix of fabric and faux leather looks good as is. And if you're talking about the cabin, this looks funky in this green color, right? But if you choose a normal color, you get a dual tone finish for the cabin, and these inlays are in champagne gold, which look good. And talking about practical stuff, storage space, there's enough on offer. You get this really handy shelf here which you can keep your phone, and there's a small cubby here, and the door pockets can hold bottles in the front and the rear doors, and there's enough space to store in a few things there as well.
Yes, behind the gear lever might not seem like a sensible place to have the power window switches, but they fall to hand easily.
But you also get some of the fancy things like the 7-inch touchscreen system, which gets of course USB connectivity, and on the top end, as the variant, you get a reversing camera, parking sensors, and a rear wash wipe as well. So you've got what you'd expect from a Hyundai, but Hyundai has skimped a bit on this Santro. For instance, the driver's seat, it's set quite high, and that would be great for shorter drivers. And that's because it does not get seat height adjustment on any variant, and the steering isn't tilt adjustable either. So while it's good for shorter drivers that they'll be able to get a seating position that will be comfortable for them right away, taller drivers will find it difficult getting a comfy seating position. And when it comes to safety, you get ABS as standard, you get a driver airbag as standard, and along with that, a pre-tensioner and load limiter equipped seatbelt on this top-end variant, which is also the only variant to get a passenger side airbag. And that is a bit of a miss. We would expect every car today to get dual airbags as standard.
There are some other small misses, like a missing central door lock and unlock button.
And if you swing around to the rear, you'll find that headrests for the rear passengers are non-adjustable. Yeah, this is going to be a bit annoying for an adult in the back seat, especially on longer journeys, and that's a pity because this is a back seat that an adult could spend time in. Look at the amount of knee room on offer here, not as much as the Grand i10, but it is sufficient. And look at the headroom, that's pretty good too. And well, you look at the width here, Hyundai say this is wider than before the older Santro, and it is about 15 millimeters narrower than the Grand i10, so this is still a pretty sizable back seat, and they've kept the seat flat so that it can accommodate 3 passengers better. We think 2 adults and a child would be here comfy. And the other thing that makes this cabin feel a little bit more comfortable is the window line. Remember, we pointed it out earlier, it dips down here, and that opens up the amount of glass area on offer, just makes the cabin feel more airy. What also makes this feel more comfortable are those rear aircon vents, because they'll help cool this cabin down that much faster. And if you're talking about the boot, alright, there's no remote boot release here. Yes, Hyundai has cut back in a few places, and well, you better get used to that. We've got a 235-liter boot here, and we'll show you what that means in terms of how you can use it with our 2 camera bags and 1 backpack. So basically it means a small family heading out for a weekend, that would do fine. And if you want to open up boot space, you can fold the seat down, but keep in mind that it's a single piece seat, not a split seat, so the whole thing has to go down.
Now let's get going.
Now, for the all-new Santro, Hyundai's gone and brought back the old 1.1-liter engine. This Epsilon motor, it's a tried and tested one, and here on the Santro, it makes 69 PS of power and comes mated to a 5-speed gearbox. Hyundai's used this engine because it helps it differentiate them from its siblings, the Eon, which has a 1-liter 3-cylinder motor, and the Grand i10, which has a 1.2-liter 4-cylinder motor. Now, the big upside of this engine over the Eon's 1-liter is that it is a 4-cylinder, and that gives it added smoothness and refinement. But if you compare it to the Grand i10, well, the Grand i10's 1.2 Kappa motor is smoother and quieter too. Now, whether it's commuting calmly in the city or cruising comfortably on the highway, this Epsilon 1.1 engine will let you do it with ease. But if you want a change of pace, a real quick one, to make a move on another vehicle or just to have some fun, well, for that, you will have to rely on making some downshifts on this gearbox. The reason why the Santro doesn't feel all that peppy is down to the gearing. It's really tall. You can do 90 kilometers an hour in 2nd gear, and 3rd gear is good for 130 kilometers an hour.
Well, that explains the Santro's laid-back nature. But if you really want to chill...
Now, Hyundai also has an AMT version of the Santro, and this really works well with the engine, which makes it really a great tool for commuting in the big city. Now, if you're wondering whether the Santro will come with a diesel engine, the answer is no. But Hyundai is offering a CNG version of the Santro, which is available in 2 trims. There is one shocker. Actually, there might be 1.5 shockers, but we'll get to the half later. The first one is the steering. Hyundai is famous for their soggy steering, have decided to ditch it altogether and give you a fine example of what's great. This is light at low speeds, as it should be, to make it convenient to just maneuver through traffic or to park. And then when you hit the highway, it weighs up just so well. That beep means we're at 80 kilometers an hour, and this has the right amount of heft to make it feel substantial but not to feel tiring. The other half a surprise is the chassis and suspension setup. It's only half a surprise because Hyundai has been constantly making strides with the way their cars drive in terms of the suspension setup, and here with the Santro they've got a whole new degree of maturity that you could expect from a small car. This really feels so solid. At highway speeds it tackles bumps without breaking a sweat. It feels very composed. At lower speeds in the city over broken roads, you might feel a bit of stiffness, but just a little. Now, brakes also deserve a mention here because I like how they feel. They've got strong bite, but unlike many small cars where just a light tap provides a very sharp bite, this is more gradual, so you can be smoother and more progressive when you're braking.
While the Santro will go up against Maruti Suzuki Celerio and Tata's Tiago, its biggest rival may be from within. The Santro's prices start at Rs 3.9 lakh for the base D-Lite version, which doesn't even get an air conditioner. And prices go up to 5.5 lakh rupees for the top-end Asta variant. This pegs the Santro 1 lakh rupees below its bigger and better equipped sibling, the Hyundai Grand i10.
So, Santro fans, our Santro has changed for 2018, and as it should. It sits now somewhere in between a regular hatchback and a proper tallboy, and what that has allowed Hyundai to do is to make it more stylish. I know you don't see it right now, but when you see it in the flesh, you will. And there is one area where there can be no arguments, and that's where the Santro is wowing us on the inside. The sense of richness inside this cabin is just hugely impressive, what Hyundai's managed to pull off here. And here too you get a fair amount of space, but don't think about this like the old Santro's backseat, which is high enough. But on the plus side, this is still a spacious cabin for a young family to be in. Aside from the cabin, what adds to the sense of maturity of the Santro is its chassis and suspension. Out on the road, it just ends up feeling like a much bigger car than its size would suggest. And then of course you have that 1.1 litre engine, which isn't the most peppy engine out there, but it is smooth, and no matter what you throw at it, it'll handle the task. Where the Santro misses out is in terms of value. While it offers a fair amount of features, Hyundai has cut back on several fronts. The missing tilt steering adjust, the seat height adjust, and well, the passenger airbag being only offered on the top-end variant does feel a bit disappointing. That should be standard across the range. And well, Hyundai has done this to keep the price in control and keep it at an arm's distance from its elder sibling, the Grand i10. But for a small family today, Hyundai's Santro is going to be an attractive and practical proposition, but a somewhat pricey one.